you're a Western blanket away from having it be, Grandpa's old truck, only it's electric.
Welcome back to Car-Pinionated. I'm Doug Stewart, digital executive producer for Fox 61. A couple weeks ago, we talked about the new Jaguar. We didn't have pictures yet, and I promised that we would have some reaction to that, so here it is. First off, host of the show, Glenn Packman, says, well, at least they showed some cars. First, there's the over-stylized perfume commercial video opening. I'm sorry, but we've seen this type of thing a zillion times before, and as much as they are trying to inspire the idea that they're breaking new ground, it comes across awfully stale in an attempt to be innovative. And this may seem silly, but as a former graphic artist, I have to discuss their new logo. Nothing about it says luxe or innovative for that matter, and it's a minor point, I know, but I do think it's a fail. The concept cars themselves are somewhat intriguing, but they're way too chiseled and blocky at this point. The greenhouses are far too narrow, and the wheels are preposterously huge, and the width at the back end looks impossibly wide. That said, there may be something attractive once they start moving towards the reality of a production vehicle. I guess we'll have to wait and see. At least it isn't another SUV. But to that end, SUVs are popular for a reason. Will there even be a market for a low-slung sports car by the time these cars hit the market? I'm getting some real Fisker Karma vibes here. Friend of the show and Fox 61 producer Dawn Ennis says, I knew from the get-go that there would be an ignorant backlash against the choice of the color pink, a historic choice that nods to Jaguar's past, and the negative reactions to the avant-garde video featuring gender nonconformity and an emphasis on fashion and design. And as for the Type 00, my first thought was to compare it to the Michael Keaton-era Batmobile after a paint job. The long hood is distinctive and in keeping with what my mind thinks of when I hear the word Jaguar. And I'm not a fan of the strike-through aspects of the design tacked on to suggest the future. Digital content producer Jen Glass says, it's like if you mixed a Crossfire and a Cybertruck and Miami Vice, and I'm here for it. And there's no reason for cars to all look the same, and while I mourn the Jaguar of old in terms of its emblem and look, I understand where they want to go now. I like that it has distinctive colors. I like that it looks futuristic, more like a futuristic take on the 80s. It's giving synthwave, and I really enjoy that. There's no reason why new vehicles have to be bland, white, gray, or black. Jaguar seems to know where it wants to go and trusts the public will be coming along for the ride, eventually. Okay, and here's what I think. I don't hate it. I think that as a concept vehicle, it's got a lot of interesting stuff on it. I like the proportions, but I don't think that'll play out in the production vehicle. I think that there's a lot of pieces to it that I think are really cool. I don't know where they go with that. Again, I wasn't a fan of the original advertisement, promo tease, whatever you want to call it. But I think it set the conversation in a place where it kind of needed to be, and it was really different. I'm dismayed at the reaction to it, but the internet's going to internet, and we'll see where it goes. They started a discussion. People are talking about it. People weren't talking about it before, so we'll see where that goes. If we get more reaction, I'll certainly share that with you. But now on to another electric vehicle, and that's the topic of this week's show. Welcome back to Car-Pinionated, our weekly show on cars, the car industry, and driving in general. I'm Doug Stewart, digital executive producer for Fox 61. And with me are Glenn Packman from beautiful Fairfield County, comedian and car enthusiast, and Jeff Buchholz from WBBM in Chicago, also a car enthusiast. Gentlemen, a name from the past has arisen again. The Scout, what used to be the International Scout, has I think the lineage, and Jeff, you can correct me because I know that Volkswagen bought Navistar, and Navistar used to be International, and International held the nameplate, the trademark for Scout, which was a Jeep competitor, Bronco, the Bronco, both kinds of Broncos, the original and the second gen competitor, and they stopped building them in about 1981, I think. The company also had a larger SUV that competed directly against the Suburban, the International Travelall, and they made all these things for years and years and years. Interesting company, a lot of emotional connection for it. And Volkswagen bought this brand and decided to make an EV company, and they have redesigned it and as an electric vehicle, and coming out with a pickup version and an SUV version. And I'm wondering what you guys think of the Scout. Jeff, why don't you give us a rundown?
This thing, it's so good, man. It's so good. It's the Scout, you're right. The Scout was your sort of Jeep CJ Ford Bronco FJ40 Land Cruiser competitor from this company that made, farm implements and bus chassis and that kind of
Right.
thing. And yeah, it kind of went away just a few years before the SUV renaissance in the US. So, started probably with the XJ Cherokee and then kept going from there. And terribly smart of the folks at Volkswagen to realize that it has in its intellectual property repository all of this great history of this car that is beloved. And these things are, these things are very prized by collectors as well. So Volkswagen very smartly started with a clean sheet of paper and have come up with a platform for an SUV and a four-door pickup truck with some really outstanding features. There was a lot of talk at the launch about how you could get a bench seat on this car, which is, I don't remember the last time one could buy a car with a bench seat. It might have been an Impala. I don't recall. Anyway, it just, you're a Western blanket away from having it be, grandpa's old truck, only it's electric, right? And it's also a recognition that electric cars don't have to have gear selectors on a console. They can be pretty much anywhere you want them to be, like on the column, for instance, back in the day. It makes it a little more complicated because you have to have an airbag for the center passenger, which is why the vast majority of cars don't have bench seats anymore. But apparently the folks at Scout have figured out a way to do it. The other great thing about this vehicle and this platform is the ability to option it with an engine, a smaller engine that will charge the batteries and give the Scout a range effectively of greater than 500 miles. The CEO of Lucid actually a few months ago said that it's impossible to create a competitive pickup truck that doesn't have some kind of internal combustion engine. There have been a lot of tests about everything from the Cybertruck to the F-150 Lightning and that's the Silverado EV and that sort of thing. And in order to have the kind of range that allows people to look at them, they have to have these giant, giant batteries. And that makes the vehicles themselves incredibly heavy. What is the curb weight on the GMC Hummer? It's like
I think it's like,
11,000 pounds or
yeah,
something. It's
I was going to say it's
ridiculous.
at least 9,000 in the
Yeah,
lowest
it's
form, and
it's
then it moves up.
it's an incredibly heavy vehicle because they have to have storage for those batteries. And once you throw a trailer on the back, your range dives down.
Mhm.
Enter Scout, which because you can option it with a regenerative electric, or rather a gas engine, which they cleverly call the Harvester, which is another nod to International's
Right.
IP. They then get the kind of range and capacity that you need for an SUV or truck that may be doing a lot of towing without having to carry the weight of more batteries. And until there is some breakthrough in battery technology, batteries are just darn heavy. They did all of this by and at the same time creating a body and sort of exterior and interior cues that feel very familiar to people who would know the Scout name.
Mhm.
It looks a lot like a Rivian. I've heard that criticism already. I think it looks enough like a Scout to kind of get off of that. But I think it's incredibly attractive. If the price comes in where I think it's going to, or where they're promising it will, when it finally hits the road in a couple of years in the $50,000 to $60,000 range, which is really the
Mhm.
sweet spot for electric SUVs, I think. It's going to be terrific. The only question is whether Volkswagen's somewhat spotty quality control history in this continent will um, transfer over to the new brand. I sure hope it doesn't.
Mhm.
But it actually it's a new plant. It's a new everything. I think the team is really into it. They've done a great job of leveraging the Scout community in the launch and sort of engaging that and using a lot of the old imagery and ads and that kind of thing. In a much better way, by the way, than I think Volkswagen used a lot of that same stuff to launch the ID Buzz. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I think it's tremendous. The thing I don't like about it is that it's going to take 2 years to get here.
Right.
But I think there's a lot to recommend it. The sort of other overlay here, obviously, is, and we've talked about this in previous podcasts, is the changing nature of the environment for electric vehicles. But good product will always find an audience.
Yeah. Glenn, what are you thinking?
Uh, Meh. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Totally kidding. Um, yeah, 3 words. I want one. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the second I looked at this car, I was like, oh my God, how cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that I think uh, VW has put the same lightning in a bottle that they did in 2000 when they re-released the Bug. That model going all the way back then had that same sort of juju going on. It was definitely enough of the retro feel, but it had also been updated to current technology so that it was comfortable and that, because no one really wants to drive an old Bug a lot because they're just, it doesn't have the tech, it doesn't have the comfort, it doesn't, et cetera, et cetera. They're
It
noisy.
doesn't have heat, is what
It
you're
doesn't have
is what you're trying to say. Yes.
some of them didn't have floorboards if you pushed really hard. So it was in one of those ones. So my point is I think they've done a beautiful job at hearkening back to what the brand was, but still giving us what cars are today. And they did that once before in 2000, and they had a very good run with the Beetle. They really did. I think they just stopped making them recently, and that doesn't mean that it won't be back again someday. But I love the retro feel of this car, but it doesn't feel out of place either. It still feels contemporary. And how do you do that? That's a feat. They
Yeah.
are very Rivian-esque, I'm going to say, but without the weird oval headlights that I just can't get past Rivian. Rivian, get rid of those things. I like this car much more. I am dying to see one up close, and I'm totally with Jeff that I don't want to wait around 2 years for this. I can't. So
Yeah. I mean, I
I'd like to
looked
see
at
it
it and
now, but
I immediately said, that not that I'm in the market for it, but that would be a vehicle that I would buy.
yeah,
And without it, and like either one, I just feel like either one makes an excellent case for itself. I like the extender. I like the looks of it. I like the colors that they have it in. I think that the ethos of it from the press conference, the launch conference that they had, just really thoughtful. And I wish them the best. I hope that this works out really well for them and they can get it to market. And Volkswagen's current bumpiness aside, they're still able to get there and say, okay, well, you need a steering column? We have a supplier for that. We need a seat? We have a supplier for that. And, we're going to get you a good deal. And I think this plays well for Rivian as well, because they have this $5 billion investment from the
Yep.
Volkswagen Group and can do those same things. And it's, obviously the great thing about, major car manufacturers is they get good pricing on a lot of stuff. I think, I guess I don't know where you differentiate from the Rivian to the Scout. I don't know what that. It just feels like they're playing in the same space,
Mhm. They very much are.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
when you go to the smaller Rivians that are also 2 and 3 years out, the Scout doesn't have that, so maybe that's where the differentiation lies. But
Yeah.
I really hope that this works out well for them. And God, people love their Scouts. There's a beautiful one that used to run around Provincetown. I'd see it every summer, and it was, letter perfect restoration, and it was great. So, and it also brings fond memories of being on the school bus too for a lot of kids.
Oh. Back in
Because
the good
that's
old
it.
days when you didn't have seatbelts on school buses.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Or
Yeah,
air conditioning.
they really did such a nice job with the launch on this. Like the rollout was just really, really good. And yeah, if it's 80% of what they're promising, I think it's a hit. And you're right, the introduction of Scout and the sort of cross-pollination now with Rivian kind of you do see the way forward, I think, for Rivian, which will probably be the R2 and the R3, which are also both fantastic looking cars. And that wouldn't be the worst thing either. And the one thing that Rivian can bring to the party once it gets the Georgia plant built is their existing plant in Illinois, which is, I mean, they're only using a fraction of it now, I think, to build the R1T and the R1S. As Scout production takes off, I could see more production, coming to the now Rivian plant. In what I always make sure to say, the central Illinois town of Normal, because I don't love saying, "Oh, they're going to build them in Normal," or they're going to go to Normal to build them, because I feel like that's ableist a little bit.
I was going to say about that Rivian R3. That's just, I want one of those too.
It's so good. It's
Is
so
that
good.
the little one?
Yeah, the
The
little one that
smaller
looks
of the
like an
three.
Yeah.
Omni.
Almost
Yeah.
almost an
It
80s
does look
hat.
like an Omni. You're right.
Yeah.
I got Series 1 Golf out of it, but
Yep.
Omni Horizon, absolutely. And as the former owner of a Horizon, it's a shock that I didn't think of that first. You can put a deposit on a Scout right now. The website is up and is taking $100 refundable deposits. In case either of you are interested. I thought about it for about 45 seconds and then remembered who I was.
Yeah, that's the same thing I come to.
I work in broadcasting, and my current daily driver is old enough to rent its own car. There's no chance I'm going to buy a shiny new anything.
I did say I immediately, like the day after the launch thing, the launch video came out, I called my brother, who's semi in the market for something we don't know, and said, I have found your new pickup truck. Your 2004 Nissan Frontier can finally be retired.
In 2 to 3 years.
Right. Yeah. Because for the first, like, 6 years he had it, they were on Hawaii. They were in island of Kauai, so it had 15,000 miles on it. So anyway, whatever.
That's right.
All right. Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Glenn.
I was gonna just throw one little thing out there. Today, as a matter of fact, while I was out on the road, I saw a brand new Toyota Land Cruiser, and that's another truck that gives me that same visceral reaction, of something new and something old. Um, that's a rare thing, I think, when I see a car on the road and I go, "Oh, what is that?" Because we kind of have a glut of cars that all look alike now. I mean, the SUV shape it just keeps getting redone, but every now and then there's that one car that makes me, stop and stare. And the Land Cruiser did that to me today, and with good reason.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great nod to the past, total nod to the future, and just nice looking in between.
It's good. They did a nice job with it for
They
sure.
did. They did absolutely.
I saw the Lexus version of it today.
Oh,
And
really?
I seriously, I'm on the phone with my mother and I'm almost stopped and explained to her what I'm seeing and why it's cool. And I realized my mother will, that's nice.
That's nice, dear. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's nice,
exactly.
dear.
Which
I
is
will
fine.
say the flat windshield on that car does most of the work
Yeah.
in making it look interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think you're right. I got a picture of it up and I'm like, oh yeah, that's true.
Mhm.
Uh,
I love when they can manage to do a revival, revisionist kind of car and it still captures something fresh and new. I'm gonna go a little bit out there and I would not be surprised if I get hate mail for this, but the PT Cruiser did that to some extent. Now, a lot of people trash the car for not being a great car. They weren't trying to make a great car with the PT Cruiser. It was supposed to take the place of the Neon, if memory serves. It was supposed to be four kind of, lame
Low end of the market.
cylinders.
Yep.
Yeah, for what it was a good car. It had plenty of room for a small four-door car. It had, place in the back to put stuff. But most of all, it looked like one of those old Woodies, and people loved it or hated it. And that's okay,
They were really popular when they came out.
They
They were
were,
hugely
Do you
popular.
remember the craze about, dealers taking way over MSRP for
Yeah.
those? Like there was
Yeah.
a stampede of people who wanted those cars.
Right.
yeah,
And you know what? They weren't bad cars. It
no,
was basically a Neon underneath. I mean, the same
right,
kind of parts. There's
right,
nothing wrong with those cars. And
right.
the sort of the image that you allude to, Glenn, sort of happened after.
Yeah.
Years
Yeah.
later, right?
When people
Right.
got used to them, right.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
mean, in the interim, they sold 1.3 million of that car. Okay, that's a success. I don't
Right.
care. There are people who call it one
Yeah.
of the worst cars ever made, and it's like,
No, it's
no,
not.
you just
Totally
don't like
not.
the styling.
Plenty of cars that were made that were worse than that car.
By all
Yes.
means.
Yeah.
We bought a used one for one of my stepsons. He loved it. The reason, he's a volunteer firefighter and his turnout gear fit in the back.
Yeah.
And the rest of it, and he was young and we did not want him having something with a huge amount of power.
It was
We
also
wanted
really
something.
cheap to insure, if I remember.
Yeah, I think you're
Absolutely,
right.
it was. It was
Yeah.
dirt cheap to insure, even for a young driver,
Yeah.
because they were generally safe and they were kind of underpowered, which was that ticked a lot of our boxes. But was it a goofy looking car? I don't know. I think they're goofier looking cars. I think they set out to hit the mark that they set out to hit. And I think that Scout is doing that too. So that's the tie-in. So
Yeah.
it goes all the way back to that.
The fun fact about that is this is not the fun fact you're thinking of. The PT Cruiser was classified as a truck.
Mhm.
So they it helped them with their corporate average fuel economy, hitting those marks, because it got, for a truck, it got better gas mileage than the other Dodge Rams at the time. So that's my fun fact. All right, gentlemen, we're going to bring this to a close. Another interesting show. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure. If you have any comments, please leave them below on our YouTube channel. If you want to look at more Car-Pinionated episodes, we have a playlist, and we will see you next week.